Hi, welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm Shannon Eliot. Today we will be hearing from two mental health care providers who deal with mental health issues themselves. Lynn Murphy is a licensed marriage and family therapist and the program manager at Momentum for Mental Health in San Jose. In her role, she oversees Crossroads Village, a residential facility, and Nikki's Place, a rehabilitation program that serves more than 90 people. She has a master's degree in clinical psychology and is an advanced level facilitator for wellness recovery action planning. Rachael Barreto is an associate social worker and clinician at Momentum for Mental Health. She has a master's degree in social work with an emphasis in mental health. Rachael is dedicated to ending stigma, informing our communities, and helping clients improve their quality of life. Welcome, Lynn, and welcome, Rachael. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
When were each of you first diagnosed with a mental health issue, and what challenges did you face?
I'll go. I first started experiencing depression when I was a child. And I just remember thinking that I wasn't quite normal, and I knew I was very sad, but I didn't really know what to do with that, and didn't really feel like people around me were sad, so I felt different. I first started getting mental health treatment when I was in college, and I was just really overwhelmed. I worked a night job, I went to school full time, I had a small child, and it just became very overwhelming, and I always felt like crying, and I was really sad, I wasn't sleeping. And so finally I went to the student health center at school and saw a doctor, and then started seeing a therapist there.
And I guess I got my first diagnosis also when I was in college. I had seen a couple of therapists before that, especially for family therapy when I was a teen. But it was really in college, I think, when things really came to a head.
So how has your choice of career been shaped by your own personal experiences with mental health issues?
When I was a kid, I wanted to be a child psychologist. I didn't want anybody else to feel like I did, and I felt like some kids needed a person to talk to, and I wanted to be that person. I also had a niece in foster care, and so I saw her go through kind of that process with the foster care system, and so I knew what I wanted to do. Tried out some other things that I thought would make more money, and then I was like, those aren't quite as fun. So I went back to psychology and just kind of went from there. And then after college, I realized mental health was something I really wanted to work in.
Do you feel like if you didn't have your personal experiences, you would be as drawn to psychology as you are?
I don't. Yeah, I think it definitely drew me to this field because I was always very interested in why do I feel this way? Why is this going on with this person? And I definitely think it played a big role. And also just kind of having that caretaking sense. I just really wanted to help other people, and I think that those situations that I went through really made that happen for me.
Yeah. I think it was a little different for me. I kind of avoided going into psychology, and actually didn't major in psychology, and college majored in philosophy. But everyone around me kept telling me that I should do this therapy thing, and I'd been to enough therapists by that point in time that I understood what that was about. And so when I finally decided I needed a career to support myself and my son, it was just kind of a natural way of going. So it was and I do think that being able to see a therapist all that time did make me understand what therapy was about, not necessarily what working in mental health was about.
So tell me a little bit about that, the differences between therapy versus working in mental health. A lot of people would think those are the same thing, so I'm curious what the differences are.
Well, I think when I was trained in grad school, I was trained, I think, mostly for outpatient private practice therapy. Somebody comes into your office and sits down and starts talking to you about whatever's going on. And mental health is very different, especially residential work. So we have the privilege of working in somebody's home, and we see them 24/7, although I'm not there 24/7, sometimes it feels like it, but we get a wide variety. And it's different because I'm not necessarily doing formal one-on-one therapy. And I think that that's very helpful in a lot of ways because it changes the relationship. The boundaries are a little bit different because the folks that we work with see us in such a different light. They know so much about us just because we're in their home and they're watching. And they see all of our movements throughout the day. So I think that makes a huge difference in what we do. And we're working, I'm working with many different people at a time instead of just seeing somebody once a week for so many weeks. I'm seeing people 5 days a week or 6 days a week throughout all of their daily activities. And I think we get a better view of what's going on with somebody, and we form a different kind of relationship.
So why did you choose to disclose to your fellow professionals? I know some therapists or providers are very reluctant to do so if they have a condition because they fear judgment or stigma. So why did you guys choose to share?
I think for me it was kind of a more natural thing. After I had my second child, I began to get depressed again. And my boss he's an incredible man, and he was just very open and accepting. And so to be able to tell him, first of all, if I didn't tell him, he would have told me, because he's in mental health. And so he knew me very well. So being able to come out and say, hey, this is what's going on for me, and I may need to take a little extra time off or whatever, was just an easy thing. And it's just been easy. I think momentum makes it easy as well. Because the agency is about reducing stigma, and it's about helping people find better qualities of life. And so I've been able to do that for myself kind of in the workplace, just through the philosophy and beliefs of our agency.
Do you think it would be different if you had a different boss?
It may have been different, but I think that I'm at a point, and I have been at a point for such a long period of time, where if I want to help people be able to come into treatment and I want to reduce stigma, I have to do that myself. Because if I'm keeping a secret but expecting other people to think there's no stigma.
And to open up and divulge their life experiences,
Absolutely. So I don't think that it works that well. So.
For me, I work with Lynn. And so, it was very easy to be open with her about what was going on. And also, the group that I work with is very observant and very good at what they do, and can usually tell me when I'm having a bad day, even if I don't know it yet. And will call me on it, like, you're not doing well today. What do you need to do to take care of yourself? And so I think it made it much more natural for me to kind of explain myself and whatever was going on with me in a very safe environment. And immediately just made me closer to all my team members. And makes me feel now that I can tell them anything. I'm pretty much an open book at work now.
Well, I know you both work in that residential treatment facility, and that's a lot more intense environment than, say, outpatient therapy, or as you were mentioning earlier, just one-on-one therapy. So do you think disclosing actually makes the bond with your teammates stronger, and you guys have each other's back more than if you guys were to keep in personal secrets?
I absolutely do. It can be very stressful on any given day, and we really rely on each other as a team for that support and that place where you can vent and debrief and talk about things, or also just joke around. And, we have a lot of jokes that happen at Crossroads. We're a very humorous bunch, and I definitely think that makes us closer and more able to interact with our clients in a better way, because we can kind of decompress with our coworkers and then go back and really, do our best work with the clients.
Well, I also think that, if I'm not managing my own mental health well, some of my interactions are not necessarily going to be the best interactions. So to be able to be open with my colleagues, and especially for them to say, hey, Lynn, what's going on with you, allows me a chance to kind of take a step back and say, okay, what is going on with me? And maybe I'm not the best person to do this intervention at this point in time. And I think there's a group of us, and knowing each other well enough to say, let me handle that for you. Yeah. Just because, everybody has different days. Regardless of mental health diagnosis or not, we all have good or bad days. And on those days, we need to make sure that what we're doing is the right intervention, not just an intervention to do an intervention. And we need to make sure that we're able to be in relationship with that person at that moment. And I think different people we work with bring up different things in us, which is really helpful, but can also have that other side of the coin.
Knowing that you have the support of your colleagues, do you think that gives you confidence when you're having an off day to get through your day to do your job well?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I actually rely on my colleagues to say, hey, Lynn, bring it back in. This is what we're focused on. Or, all kinds of things. Rachel's really good at that. In staff meetings, she'll be like, hey, can we bring it back to the topic, if I get off the topic or something. And that's definitely helpful.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
we've kind of mastered that ability to kind of be like, okay, you're having a hard day. Let me take over this for you so that you can kind of, hold yourself together, do what you need to do to take care of yourself. So I think we've actually really become very good at that. I don't even have to come in and say I'm having a bad day. Like someone will look at me and be like, okay, what can I help you with today? So it's actually that's pretty really incredible. Nice. Yeah.
Well, and we're very supportive, very supportive. I mean, I think in life we need support. And if we can be able to be support for each other, then we can actually hold wellness. And if we're holding wellness for each other and helping each other recognize where we are in our wellness, then we get to pass that on to the folks we work with. And it would be great if we had a completely well workforce. And I guess that's what I'm working for. And it's not about diagnosis, it's about being well all the time and living that.
And I do think us being able to hold wellness for each other also models that for our clients. They live in a residential and a community where we really encourage them to be accountable for each other and, let somebody know that they're having an off day if they are, or see what's going on with that person. And so it really does model that for the people around us.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that.
So how long did each of you keep your conditions to yourselves?
I guess specifically at this work, probably for about 1.5 to 2 years. I think I tried to keep it to myself. And after that, it was like, well, this isn't working, first and foremost. But I had been open before that. And I think that had made it a lot easier for me. In college, I had a friend, and we were very open about our own mental health struggles. And it wasn't something that was awkward for me then to go forward with.
For me, when I first started, we actually did this exercise where we were all telling our narratives and things about our past and how we kind of came to where we are now. And I think in that moment, I kind of let everything out. And it was a real experience for me because it immediately forced me, it was optional, of course.
Yeah, it was.
But it was really, I think, important for me to get that out and to share it with my colleagues. And from that moment on, it was an immediate, safe environment. Everybody's reaction was so supportive, and I think it just made me immediately comfortable.
Yeah.
So I think this is probably the first work environment when I've just been like, hey, this is what's going on with me. And but yeah, now at work, it's just kind of like, yeah, I'm having a bad day.
So you wouldn't have considered that at previous work environments?
Not so much. There were I've had some different jobs, and it just never really seemed appropriate, or maybe it was a team that was a little more disjointed. Where we work now in the residential, we are a team, and we have to be in order to keep that place running and do what's best for our clients. And in other places I've worked in, it was more individualized work, and so that makes it a little more difficult because you don't really build that connection.
Yeah, and that was specifically a team-building exercise about how did you get into this line of work, and what biases do you bring to the work? And it did its job in allowing us, each person, to think about, what it is that they hold, and it really built the team so that it was incredibly strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever discouraged you from disclosing?
Yeah, I would say absolutely, especially in grad school. I was struggling in grad school, and some of the professors and instructors knew that I was struggling in grad school. And so there was some discouragement about being open about that. And I think it wasn't overt discouragement. It was more, I don't even know exactly how to explain it, but it was more like, you need to not let people know you're having a problem, and you need to make sure that your problems never affect your clients, and all of that stuff about boundaries, which is very important. And I absolutely hold those things. But it was almost as if, so here's a secret, and you have to keep it to be able to be good at your work. And I'm not in that belief system anymore.
Yeah, I think for me, it was probably more my own discouragement and just kind of how people would perceive it. And for me, it's definitely puts you in a vulnerable place, and not being sure if I felt like I wanted to be vulnerable with everybody around me. And so for me, it was more kind of a personal decision. I don't think I've disclosed in a lot of different settings to really get discouragement. And I've definitely kind of let some teachers know and stuff throughout school. Just different assignments kind of require you to kind of pull out all that stuff that you've ever dealt with. But yeah, I think it was more so my own stuff and kind of how is this going to affect me? Do I really want everybody to know? Because you always, and I see this sometimes with clients, but as soon as you're having a bad day, then it's because you must be depressed or you must be this way, or, you know, rather than it just being like, no, I'm just having a bad day. I'm tired. I'm cranky. Like, you know, and so I think I always worry that maybe as soon as I'm having a bad day that somebody's going to attribute to like, oh my God, you're not doing well. So.
Right.
So what support have you had either professionally or personally for your decision to disclose?
Well, you know, I think the environment we work in is supportive of that. My boss has been incredibly supportive of that. And I think that if we have if Momentum holds a certain philosophy about what we believe about mental health. And I think if we hold that philosophy and we're asking staff people to take that philosophy in their work with our residents or our clients, we need to, as managers, hold that philosophy for our staff and take that philosophy to when we're working with our staff. So I don't see that I could be anything but supportive. And we have a very open relationship on the team. And I go back to what Rachael said. It's incredibly important for us to have that close team.
Yeah, I mean, I would say exactly what Lynn said. Like, the work environment is so supportive that I'm actually I feel like I have support pretty much doing anything at work. I feel like they support me in all of my ridiculousness that happens at work. So.
Absolutely. Well, and we work to continually build support.
Absolutely.
I couldn't do the job without the support behind me. It's a very difficult, taxing job.
So in your experiences, how common is it for providers to have mental health challenges?
I think it's much more common than people would think.
I think it's just as common as for mental health providers to have challenges as it is for anybody in the general population. Yeah.
So why do you think there's stigma placed on providers who are struggling with mental health issues?
I think stigma exists, regardless. Stigma exists about mental health issues. Stigma exists still about race. Stigma exists about weight. It exists in just all different areas. And I think anything that we want to deem as being frightening or different, there becomes a stigma around that. And I think we have this belief in mental health that the providers know everything and they've got the answers. So if the providers are also struggling with their own symptomology or their own illness, or I don't like diagnostic terminology, but still, then obviously they don't have the answers and they're not the ones who know everything, which I actually think isn't, nobody has all the answers, and I definitely don't hold any answers for you or for anybody else. So I think that helps create that with providers, but mental health stigma exists, and we have to combat it.
And I would agree with that. And I also think it's that whole perception, if somebody's telling you what to do, it's because they've already know how to master that. It's like somebody who smokes telling me you shouldn't smoke and you should quit and this is why. You're like, no. Why aren't you doing it? So it's kind of one of those thoughts. It's like going to a doctor and them being overweight and trying to tell you that you need to lose weight. I mean, I would ask well, what are you doing to lose weight? But it's kind of that same idea. You expect that the provider, has kind of this great life in a bubble and things are going well and that's why they're a provider. When in actuality, I think when people have gone through something, it actually makes them a better provider.
Yeah.
So what fears did you have in disclosing your life experiences to colleagues? I know where you work now is incredibly supportive and that disclosure really helps you guys be closer, but throughout your career beforehand, what fears existed, if any?
I think there were more fears that I placed on myself. Somehow that I would be judged not a good enough provider, or, gosh, how can she help anybody else? Because look at the mess her life is. So, and I've gotten over that.
Yeah, I would argue the same thing. I think it's just kind of a judgment. You're worried that people are going to judge you. Or if I come to work and I'm having a bad day, people will be like, oh, you're not fit to work today. You need to go home, or, just kind of that idea that it's always going to be around and kind of always come up. So.
Right, that you're always going to be sick, as opposed to the fact that you could ever be well. I don't want everything attributed to, one piece of my life. There's so much more about me, and I guess that's kept me quiet in other places.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I think I never really thought of myself. Like, I totally am aware of all the stuff that I've gone through and my struggles, but I never tend to think of myself as having a mental illness challenge.
Right.
And I think that I'm worried that other people will think of it that way, because I just kind of think of it as life, and this is what I have to deal with. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Do you share your life experiences with clients, and if so, how is that received?
I do sometimes. When it's appropriate to disclose, it's usually actually received really well. Because I think when you are in that moment, when you're going through something, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling anxious, you really think that nobody understands how you feel. And you feel like you're the only person, and why are you feeling this way? And it's a really scary place. And I think to disclose to them that you have been there and you know how that feels, and just being able to kind of hold that with them actually makes them feel much more safer and comfortable, and just builds that relationship that they can trust you and, value actually what you're saying, because you've been through that. It's hard to listen to somebody who seems that they've never gone through anything, because I'm like, well, what life experience do you have to help me deal with this?
Yeah.
And so I think that that lets clients know that we're people too. We've been through things, we struggle with things as well, and that we can actually relate to them, and that it's okay to talk about it.
Yeah. And I do WRAP, Wellness Recovery Action Planning, and there's just self-disclosure built into that. And so I think it becomes really a very natural thing for me. That's just something that's part of who I am. It's another thing about me. Sometimes I feel like, sometimes when I'm looking at a client who's having a specific challenge, and maybe they're just really struggling with a lack of confidence. It's like, hey, you know what? I understand where you're going from, and look at me, I'm sitting in this manager's chair. You could be here. You have just as much ability to be where I am. But for the most part, I just disclose through WRAP.
And I do think that we're a perfect example of you being able to have certain issues and still deal with them and have a good quality of life. Because I think for a lot of our clients, that hope or that aspiration has kind of been gone. And so it's nice for them to see people who are dealing with this but have still gone on to have good lives, or a good quality of life.
Do you find that you can really reach clients who have gone through things very, very similar to what you've gone through?
I think it differs. I don't know that, we all have our own perspective on what we've gone through, and even though we may have similar diagnoses or similar circumstances, our reactions may not be the same. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how similar, the human condition is similar from human to human. So in as much as that's true, then I suppose it can be helpful. But I don't presume that I understand or know what this person is feeling or experiencing in this moment just because I've experienced something.
Yeah, I would agree. You like to think when you're disclosing something like this that it's helpful for the person, but at the end of the day, we really don't know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you so much, Lynn, and thank you so much, Rachel, for joining me today. Best of luck to both of you.
Thank you very much.
To learn more about Momentum for Mental Health, visit momentumformentalhealth.org. Marcia Linehan, an esteemed psychologist and original developer of dialectical behavior therapy, disclosed her lifelong struggle with borderline personality disorder in 2011. Read about it in the New York Times piece by Benedict Carey entitled "Expert on Mental Illness Reveals Her Own Fight." You can find it at newyorktimes.com. Breaking the Silence, mental health professionals disclose their personal and family experiences of mental illness is an ebook that reveals the deep commonalities between patients and professionals. Read a collection of moving and inspiring stories of serious mental disorders from trainees, clinicians, and scientists in the mental health profession. You can find it at books.google.com. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.